Okay, let's get started. So, what kinds of apps are there? When I'm using an app on my phone, I don't really care what kind of app it is, as long as it can do what I need. But if I want to have a mobile app built, suddenly there's so many choices that a developer are coming to me and giving me as far as the technology stack. Native or web, cross-platform or coded for each, gamification, notifications. So how do I know as an entrepreneur, someone who's going to try and build an app, what kind I actually want to ask for? In this talk, I'm going to cover that question before you make that big investment in your time, your money, your team, your credibility, everything, about how you can choose what kind of app you actually need to get built. So this post is building on the previous one that I made in this series of how to build an app. It ties in with my Substack, so you should go over there. If you've got questions after listening to this, post them in the notes section of my Substack. I will answer your questions. There's a lot of material to cover and even beginning to understand this area. So this whole entire series will be packed with facts. So get your notepad out. But I will be going light on the tech talk. So hopefully I can reach both the business side folks and the tech side folks with what I'm about to say to you today. So let's dive right in. So there's several main types of apps on mobile. We can look at the native app. Those are apps that are a bit harder to build, but they're going to provide full access to the power of these mobile platforms. The second kind of app is the web app. They're kind of two extremes. Your mobile app is all hardware technologies, and the web app is using the power of the cloud. Those can be optimized for mobile, but they're a very different tech stack. And the third is kind of an in-between. It's the hybrid app, and they aim to be the best of both worlds. They're a native app that uses web technologies. In making these choices, obviously there's going to be the kinds of features that you need, but I will delve further into that. Notifications are a key type of choice factor. Now the truth is that even the most simple native app these days is going to have some internet functionality built in. And in one of my previous posts, I talk about how mobile apps these days are really part of the fabric of the internet. So, for example, if I make a calculator app and then I go and upload that app to the App Store and then it crashes, I, as the developer, get transmitted to me over the internet information about analytics from that crash inside the app. Also, my app can handle notifications that it receives over the internet. So they really are highly connected these days, even for a native app. So I also looked in previous talks about that virtuous cycle where you're going to try to market your app. There's going to be potentially an advertisement, somebody's going to click on it, and then they're going to download that from an internet advertisement, go into the App Store. There's a lot of things to that cycle. But today what I want to talk about is the actual build of the app itself. So that package that software engineers are going to build, what's going to be inside of that package when it goes up into the App Store or elsewhere is deployed. Now, we learnt in that previous section of the series that developers have to write that code, they're going to create that package that's uploaded, and then someone's going to come along and be a customer and hopefully download your new app. So typically for a native app, that's going to involve the App Store or the Google Play Store, and those stores bring challenges of their own. Teams who are used to working with those app stores, they should be able to handle those challenges. But if you've got teams that are used to web apps, it's going to be difficult and you're going to get a constant stream of complaints. In my career of 20 years working across both, I have seen website teams complain bitterly. And seriously, as an app entrepreneur, the buck stops with you. Your team are going to be working in the app space. Complaining about this stuff is like a ship's captain complaining about the sea. You need to be master of the waters that you're sailing on. So what are web apps? Basically, they're a website. So we're all familiar with that. We crack open our web browser. Developers don't need to have approval from anyone to make a website. And these days, a web app has a lot of interactive functionality, such as logins. You've got the ability to dynamically generate pages. And thanks to modern JavaScript frameworks like React, they can interact with maps, cards, all sorts of interactive elements. So they can do a lot of things that real native apps can do. But a web developer doesn't need to write any native code. They are using exclusively web technologies, potentially optimized for mobile, but they're not required to meet any App Store needs in specific, but they're using a combination of human readable text, markup languages, scripting and design, and once they've produced all of that work, that's going to get deployed, which basically just means copied up into a hosting space on the cloud. Again, I mentioned in a previous talk what the cloud was. And that process can be pretty much instantaneous. So that cycle, it's really, really quick. Now, as I mentioned, a web app is really just a website. So that package of functionality that your developers worked on, they push that up, and straight away your visitors see that result. So that means that if you've got some kind of need to react quickly to the market, often web technologies can be a great way to do that. So web apps are just websites, right? They're deployed on a web server. Please refer back to my previous talk about what a server is. So they're not installed on a phone as such. But there's a lot of good things that you can do to make them responsive to that phone environment and make them work quite a lot more like a native app. Responsive apps. These are ones that are designed specifically with different screen sizes in mind. So obviously, for example, your laptop screen, it's always going to be this sort of landscape orientation pretty much. But a cell phone obviously can be rotated. They come in all different shapes and sizes. It might potentially even be an iPad or a tablet of some sort. So developers use this word responsive to mean that the app handles those different use cases. Now, landscape mode is not just about the way it's displayed, it's also about how people are going to interact with it. You might have to lay out elements quite differently. In the case of a sort of a master detail type app, you've got different clutter that needs to be hidden away from a more complex web interface, and it can make the app appear more quickly, respond on the screen in a way that works much better for the mobile use case, and in general they should be much more user friendly. Google has promoted the use of progressive web apps, so they are responsive web apps, but more than that, they are set up in a way using a technology called web workers or web sockets. Don't need to know what that is, but the basic idea of it is that quite a few of the features that you might get on a native app are sort of become available. However, these are not very portable. The iPhone is a lot more oriented to security. Its customers expect a higher standard of security. So in general, the notification system that's used in a progressive web app doesn't really work on iOS. And there may be carrier-dependent settings on even an Android phone that result in a PWA not working as expected for your customers either. However, they can be an option. They require the addition of a manifest file. The developer team that's working on the PWA needs to know about socket-based technologies. They need to know what they're doing when it comes to building highly responsive apps that have all of those controls in it. But it can give a web app some of that functionality of a native app. So going to talk now about the web view. This is basically starting to get into the area of the native app, but it's a component of native app stacks that basically gives you an area of the screen that you can display web content into, but it's actually part of a native app. So for example, if I tap the bookmark on a home screen and that progressive web app might get launched, because that's how progressive web apps usually typically work. You'll get a prompt to save the app to your home screen. It's going to launch into that phone's native browser, whether it's Safari or mobile Chrome. Now that entirety of that Chrome view that is completely occupying the screen, that is technically a web view. A web view is basically a cut-down web browser. So Safari View Controller, a Chrome view, but there's no buttons, there's no location bar, there's no history. All of that context has been stripped away, and all we've got is that display of part of the web page on the screen. So think of the web view as basically taking like a miniature web browser and embedding it inside of an app. You get that experience when you're reading an email and you find what looks to be a web page, but it's embedded right there into your email software. It's actually rendering that web view. Now, because some web pages can be stored locally as a progressive web app or PWA, they can sort of continue to work in a limited way even if the phone is not connected to the internet. You can try this out. There's a few apps out there if you search for commonly used PWAs like Trivago.com or Starbucks.com. I believe Twitter at one point was a PWA. I'm not sure if it still is. But you can basically save that onto your home screen and you get that web view pops up. The important difference to tell you about whether or not you've got a PWA or web app or a native app is that the native app is going to come via either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. And only those native apps that come from those stores can directly access features like Bluetooth and the microphone and the camera. In some cases, there's various workarounds and frameworks and so on that allow these web apps to actually access the camera, but that direct access, for example, creating custom phone viewfinders, for example, that is only available to a native app. That installation experience as well for progressive web apps, that installation process is a little hinky, to be honest, or at least I find it so. You're browsing and it says, you've got to install it. This little icon pops up and it doesn't really have the user trust that I get. So if I'm jumping into the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, I've got some guarantee that Google has kind of vetted that app in some way. Obviously, it's not ironclad guarantee, but at least there's a process there. And if I've done some stuff to make sure that my phone is secure, I've got that increased level of confidence from using the store. But a progressive web app is really just a website. If you know that your customers are all on Android, or you've got a captive group, such as in a B2B type situation, where you can specify the platform, you could consider a PWA, but just remember that it's, despite all the service workers and talk of notifications, which really don't work across the board, it's still just a web app. So let's have a look at that third kind of app. It's the hybrid app, combination of web and native. These apps are installed from the Apple App Store or Google Play Store, and like a native app, they can receive notifications, they can have the custom viewfinders, Bluetooth, they can really access the full power of that device. Now, hybrid apps also use a web view to show internet-based content. So it's similar to like your email displaying you HTML content, but instead of having some sort of web server stuff in there, you've got the part of the experience of a mobile app. Some native applications, they might display a carousel of special offers, for example, and the special offer content might come from the web, whereas the rest of the app might come from native functionality. So hybrid apps sound great, right? Are there any problems? They seem like the best of both worlds. But they're very expensive to build, and they can also be very buggy and complex to maintain. The experience you get as a customer when you're navigating between pages in a web app, it can often be very complex because you've got to, like I said, you've really just got a stripped back web browser. It's not a complete web browser. There's no history. So what's going to happen is, navigating backwards and forwards between pages, there's no sort of history. All that has to be managed by your developer team. You have to figure out what you're going to do if somebody clicks on a link that's in a page that goes somewhere you don't want them to go, like say, the privacy policy, or even if there's like user-generated content, like for example, somebody posted a review on a product page. Somebody goes and clicks on that hyperlink, what happens? But they are obviously the most powerful and flexible as long as the additional workload can be handled and managed. One other thing to look at here is the cross-platform app. Now, these are a native app in a sense. However, they use a specialist technology stack, which I will talk about in other sections of this series. And, for example, it could be Google's new Flutter framework, or a game framework even, like Unity. And they allow developers on your team to create an experience that's very close to native, but it'll have one source code base, and it compiles down to both iOS and Android. So let's sum up. There's basically three main types of apps. We've got our native app, we've got our web app, and we've got our hybrid app. Native apps are powerful but difficult to build. They require code to be written for even very small updates, and the packages for a native app need to be uploaded to the App Store and Google Play Store whenever you want to change them. Those packages are not human readable, they're binary, and the native apps are really the only way to reliably access the full power of the device. They're really well suited to certain types of applications where notifications, Bluetooth camera, microphone, those types of things are only generally available to native apps. Web apps or online apps are basically just a website that is specifically designed for a mobile handset. Because a web app is online, changes appear straight away, and the code for web apps is sort of easier to handle, it's more human readable. There's a lot of teams out there who have the expertise to build web apps. And a responsive web app, which is a big improvement on a general website, it's going to strip away some of the functionality and make sure that you've got a nice experience, whether it's in portrait or landscape, and it's going to fit onto the phone, and the buttons are all going to work nicely. And another subset of that is going to be your progressive web app, which is basically just a website. It's bookmarked onto your home screen, so it appears as an icon. You tap that icon and then it launches into a full screen web view on your phone and behaves a lot like an app in many respects, especially on Android, not so much on iOS. The difference, obviously, if you need to tell between the different kinds of apps, is that if an app comes from Google Play or from the Apple App Store, it will be native. And both companies now do not like folks trying to build thin wrappers around a web app and put it into the store. Those apps are more and more getting denied by the stores because they just are for native apps. Hybrid apps, they're a native app that have some web content built into them, a little bit like your email client does. They're very, very much more complicated, but they can have the best of both worlds. All right, this has been Totally a Thing. Thanks for listening. I hope you found this useful. Please stay tuned for the next in the series. I have been Sarah Smith. Please subscribe and support my channel. Thank you.